All right, well, welcome. And it's a pleasure to be back together with you. And in case there might be some that we didn't see last night, my name is Mark Sandoval. I am the medical director at Uchee Pines Institute and health ministries director for our conference, the Gulf States Conference, and a few other things as well. And our family is looking at starting, don't touch that spot. Don't touch that spot either. Don't touch any spot. Okay. We're looking at starting a ministry. And we're not sure exactly where we're going to land. We're waiting for the Lord to reveal that to us. And so we are happy to be in that phase of transition where we know we're going to be going. We don't know where we're going to be going to. And we're kind of in that Abraham moment. God said go. But he hasn't yet said where. And okay, we're in that phase. Now, yesterday, just as a brief recap, we were looking at different ways that an individual can understand health. We looked at health from the standpoint of a tree, and symptoms and behaviors and needs and beliefs, and then finally sources. And we realized that symptoms and disease are a good thing. Not it's good that you have it, but it's good that you can have it to let you know something is wrong, right? Let you know that something's wrong. And we looked at the road and saw that when you're on the road, you're inside the law, things function well. Once you get outside of the law, then things are not so comfortable, don't function quite so well, and the farther you go, the worse it gets. And then finally, we looked at the cells and how the cells function and saw that there is this pathway where by spiritual information, the Spirit brings in spiritual information, which is either truth or lies and error. And when it's truth, that's made available, of course, to the cortex of the brain, travels down the nerves to the different cells of the body, and controls how they function. And God created us in His image, so He created us to function by the truth. And when the truth is the foundation of what we bring in, then that has a good, positive impact upon the control of function in the body. But when it is lies and error, well, that has its impact through the same pathway, and it doesn't lead to a good result. But that's not the only way that we can have dysfunction. There are other ways that we can have dysfunction too. And so we're going to start into that and looking at different ways that we can dysfunction so that we can tease between what might be going on in our own situation, or if we have friends and family, and understanding what might be going on with them. And the first form of dysfunction that we'll look at is inheritance, right? And when we're talking inheritance, then of course we're assuming that we're talking about DNA or the genetic material. By the way, this is just a side note. This is extra. You don't have to pay for this. Well, you're not paying for any of it, so that's okay. But, you don't just inherit the DNA. You don't just inherit physical genetic material from father and mother. You inherit a spirit from mother and father as well, right? You don't just inherit the body from them, you inherit a spirit from them as well. And I think many people have the idea, or at least we kind of have had this idea, where, God kind of comes in and creates a new spirit for every individual that comes along. But in reality, when you look at how God created humanity, He created humanity to reproduce. Right? And reproduction is not just a reproduction of the physical structure of an individual. Reproduction is also a reproduction of the spirit too. And so God created Adam with spirit and body together, and from Adam He took a rib, but He also took part of spirit, right, from Adam, and added some of His own to that, and He had Eve. And then Adam and Eve come together, and there's a combination not just of the physical structure of the individuals, but the spirit as well. And have you ever noticed that you might have a similar personality to mom or a similar personality to dad? Not just the way that you look, but the way that you respond and the way that you act or the way that you walk or other things of that nature. Or you might have the same similar deficiencies that they had. Why? Well, because you inherit the Spirit as well. And you get part of it from mom, part of it from dad, just like you get part of your genetic material from mom, part of your genetic material from dad. And the combination of that, you have a new individual. That's individual. There's nobody that's the same, nobody that has exactly the same personality, and so on. And it's marvelous how God has made us. It's just wonderful. It's marvelous. And so with inheritance, we're going to look at things from a physical standpoint, the DNA structure, and the DNA really is kind of the blueprints. It's the blueprints that are used in order to make all of the physical structures of the body. Of course, you begin as a single cell, and that single cell is going to end up in 50 to 100 trillion cells in your body, and it's going to end up in over 250 different types of cells, even though you began with one cell that, of course, can't be any more than just one. And so how is it going to go from one cell to 50 to 100 trillion, and how is it going to go from one cell to over 250 different types of cells? Well, you have to have a blueprint that you work with. And if you're going to have different types of cells, then you've got to take this part of the blueprint for this cell, you take this part of the blueprint for this kind of cell, you take this part of the blueprint for this cell, and so on. If you took all of the same information, if you used all of the information from the whole blueprint for every cell, then every cell would be the same. So the only way you can get different cells is if you pick and choose from the available blueprints that are there in order to build the structure of the cell, right? And it's quite amazing how that happens in fetal development, embryology, and so on. And so when you have an inheritance problem, then what you have is you have the DNA is damaged in a prior generation. So that blueprint gets messed up in one spot or two spots or a few spots. It has damage and it gets messed up in a prior generation. So that happens with mom and dad. It happens with grandpa, grandma, somewhere along the line there. And that defect is located in a section of the DNA that we call a gene. And genes are simply segments of information in that DNA that ultimately is going to result in producing a protein. All right, that's really what a gene is. A gene is just a section of the DNA that has the information that ultimately is going to produce a protein. And a different information, you're going to end up with a different protein. And proteins are responsible for structure. Proteins are responsible for function. And proteins are also part of the products that the cells make as well. So if you have a defect in the DNA, if you have a defect in the blueprint, and it's there in a gene for a particular protein, then that protein doesn't get made right. It doesn't look right, doesn't fit together right, and its function is dependent upon its shape or its structure. And so if the shape is a little bit off, well, then the function is a little bit off as well. And so that can be a problematic. And that defect, that defective gene, gets passed on to you when you are only one cell. Sperm, egg, together, one cell, right? And from that one cell, every other cell in your body comes. So therefore, every cell in your body will have the defective gene. Right? Every cell in the body, if it's inherited, then every cell in the body has the defective gene. But only certain cells use certain genes. And, you know, we were just talking about that. Different type of cell has to use different parts of the blueprint in order to form that type of cell. And so there are certain cells that will use that gene, but other cells won't use it. And so it won't bother the ones that don't use it. It'll only bother the ones that use it, right? Because you have a bad part there. And so all cells of a certain type which use that defective gene must manifest the dysfunction. Right? So it must be manifested by all cells of a particular type that use that particular gene, because the gene's messed up, the blueprint's messed up, and it's the same blueprint in every cell of the body. So therefore, the defect will not be localized Like you won't have patches of problems within a particular cell type. It has to be everywhere that particular cell type is. For example, like sickle cell anemia. Individuals have a bad copy of the hemoglobin DNA that makes a hemoglobin molecule. There's a bad copy from mom, there's a bad copy from dad. It's in every cell of the body, but only the red blood cells use that gene because only the red blood cells produce hemoglobin. You don't find it in white blood cells, you don't find it in other, cells and so on. But you will find the defective product in every red blood cell. Not just a few here and there, it'll be in every one because every red blood cell has to use that defective gene to produce its product, and it's defective, so you're going to have a defective product. So it'll be throughout every red blood cell. You won't find like 5 here and 10 there and so on. It's all of them, right? They all have the defective gene. So, whoops. When you have a defect in the genes, it disrupts normal function. It disrupts normal structure, right? It doesn't create new function. Now, evolutionary theory has tried to help us believe that there are all of these beneficial mutations, and by these beneficial mutations, things get better over time. I'm sorry, we just don't see that, right? Mutations take away function, right? And so you lose function with those mutations. And so it doesn't create new functions, it only stops existing functions if it's an inheritance issue, right? And so let's say, for instance, you have an individual that has colon cancer, and the colon cancer starts over here, and then it starts spreading and getting bigger and so on. That cannot be inherited, right? By nature, that cannot be inherited. Because if it was inherited, it would have to be where? All throughout the colon. Because it has to be in every cell of a particular type, right? So if it's within a particular type of cell and you have it beginning here or there, it is not inheritance, cannot be inheritance. If somebody has arthritis and a few joints here and there, but it's not every joint, that's not inheritance either. In order for it to be inheritance, it has to be every cell of a particular type that uses the defective gene, then it can be inheritance, right? Now, that's to say inheritance is a little bit different to say that the genes are involved or not involved. When it's inheritance, you can't help the manifestation because it's a necessary gene that the cell has to use, and it's messed up. Now, every disease process has something in the genes that it uses in that process. But there is something that can turn on the bad gene and can turn off the bad gene. And so in that case, yes, genes are involved. Yes, there's genetics involved, but it's not the genes or the genetics that's driving the process. It's only the genes that are being used as a part of the process. There's something else that's in control, switching it on, switching it off. And so the cause is not the gene. The cause is the switch, or the thing that's flipping the switch, right? That's the thing that's ultimately the cause. With inheritance, it doesn't matter what you do, it doesn't matter how you live, it doesn't matter anything of that nature, you will manifest the problem because you just can't help it. It's in every cell, and that cell has to use those genes, right? It's got to use them. So a second cause for dysfunction is environment. And by environment, we can say trauma, right? Trauma. So freezing, burning, smashing, cutting, slashing, other things of that nature, right? Environmental dysfunction. And what environmental dysfunction does, or trauma, is it destroys or disrupts normal structure. So finger, nail, wrong nail, right? Hammer and nail to the wrong nail, right? So you're going to have some broken cells, some broken tissue that is going to disrupt the structure. And since function is dependent upon structure, now you disrupt the function. All right, so things don't function quite so well, and you go ow, 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 and so on. And this can be localized. So you can smash one finger and all of your other fingers are okay. So you can have localized dysfunction when it comes to trauma, whereas when it's inheritance has to be throughout a particular cell type. And if the damage is beyond your capacity to heal, the effect can be permanent. For example, if you cut off your arm, right? Human arms don't usually grow back very well. If you can find it and you can have a good vascular surgeon and you can reattach and so on, okay, well, that's one thing. But, you know, if you just cut it off and you lost it and you didn't get it again, well, guess what? You're not growing back a new one. So the effect of not having an arm will last forever, but, well, not forever, until God comes. But the healing process should bring that to closure, right? So that it's no longer open, it's finally closed over, and things should heal, even though it might not regenerate the entire arm. If you have a smaller injury that should be able to heal well, but doesn't heal well, that's not a problem of the trauma, that's a problem of the healing process. For example, some people develop keloids. And keloids, where you have scar tissue, you might be cut somewhere or an abrasion or something like that, and then you get scar tissue and the scar tissue overgrows. And so instead of staying in its normal boundaries, then it starts growing bigger and so on, and some people have some pretty big keloids. Well, keloids, the cause is not the trauma is a trigger, of course. The cause or the problem is in the healing process. Right? It's not in the original trauma. The trauma is just the trigger to get the process going, but it's the process that's defective that then leads to the problem. Now, when it comes to trauma, all it does is disrupt existing structure and function. It never creates new function. It doesn't create new function, and that's important for us to understand. Then we come to chemicals. Right? We've got problems with chemicals, and with chemicals, well, you need a good concentration of chemicals so that the cells can take in what they need. But if you've got too little, then you're going to have deficiencies. If you've got too much, you're going to have toxicities. And then if you add poisons or other types of things to it, well, that's not going to help the situation either. And when it comes to chemicals, poisons, envenomations, toxicities, deficiencies, all of these different things, what they do is they stop existing processes from happening, or they slow them down significantly. They don't create a new process. They stop existing processes from happening. So for example, you get bit by a rattlesnake. I can't remember if we have rattlesnakes around here or not, but okay. Because it's been a while since I lived in Michigan. And sometimes it's cold, and sometimes reptiles don't like cold things. But anyway, so your alligators are only in the Saginaw Zoo. You know, if you got bit by a rattlesnake, well, the rattlesnake has a hemotoxin in it. And one of the functions or the components of the hemotoxin is to stop the blood clotting process. And so, you know, they bite the little mouse, bite the little rat, and then it fills it with that toxin. Then it can't stop the bleeding process, and it bleeds out. And then you can have other snakes like coral snakes that have a neurotoxin, and it affects the nervous system and so on. But with that hemotoxin, it doesn't create a new process. What it does is it goes in there and it stops an existing process from happening, and then you have dysfunction, problems associated with it. So chemicals don't create a new process. But they can add to a process. They can be used as a part of that as well. So here is an example of gout, gouty arthritis. I don't know how many horses have gout, but people have gout. And you can have it. There's a common location for it. That's the first metatarsal phalangeal joint. And when gout is in that location, it's called podagra. And maybe some of you have had it. I've taken care of patients in the ER with gout. Very painful. They don't like it. Can't step on it. It's very inflamed and very problematic. And well, what's the cause of gout? All right, uric acid. So an individual might have high uric acid levels, and then you have crystallization of that uric acid, so it becomes super concentrated, and then in that super concentrated state, it crystallizes, and now it's all pokey and so on, and there's inflammation and pain and swelling and everything that goes along with it. And of course, you can give somebody a medication like allopurinol, and that can decrease the uric acid levels, and when the uric acid levels get low enough, then the gout goes away, and you've fixed the problem, right? Except that you have to take allopurinol for the rest of your life in order to keep that under control. Now, here you have cholesterol plaque. Let's say that that's in a coronary artery in the heart, and so here's coronary artery disease. What's the cause of the plaque? All right, cholesterol, right? So you've got cholesterol. Cholesterol accumulates in the plaque. It gets bigger and bigger. The area for the blood to go, the lumen, gets smaller and smaller, and eventually you get to the point where you can't get blood across there, and somebody goes, oh, it hurts, and then bad things happen. And then here you have somebody with breast cancer, left-sided breast cancer. What's the cause for breast cancer? Well, now everybody starts scratching their head and they say, well, I've heard it's this, I've heard it's that, maybe it's hormones, maybe it's, this, it's high-fat diet, maybe it's animal proteins and so on. We do know that, that processed red meats, like salami and bratwurst and hot dogs and other things of that nature, they are class 1A carcinogens according to the World Health Organization, and so there's as much evidence that processed red meats cause cancer as there is evidence that smoking cigarettes and breathing asbestos and so on result in cancer as well. So maybe it's a whole bunch of animal proteins and bacon and bratwurst and other things that they ate, and they developed that breast cancer. Well, the problem with this understanding of the cause of these conditions is an old thing that we learned in science back in chemistry class, and that is diffusion. Right? There's a law of diffusion. And the law of diffusion, in essence, is that if you have anything that can mix in a liquid environment like this, it will tend to mix evenly throughout that environment. And it'll tend to mix evenly throughout that environment, and especially if you stir the thing up. Now, inside your bloodstream, do things get stirred up? Well, sure, you've got a heart that's going, and you got blood vessels, and it's going all over the place, and so things get stirred and mixed up pretty easily. So if you have your gout, and I want to know whether it's gout or not, then I can send you to the lab, and we can draw some blood to find out whether your uric acid levels are high or whether they're not high. Now, where is the lab going to draw your blood from? All right, from your toe, of course. No, they're not going to draw blood from your toe. So they're drawing blood from your arm, but the problem's in your toe. So how do they know what they got from your arm has anything to do with what's in your toe? Because of diffusion, right? Because we know if you have a substance that's in the bloodstream, it doesn't matter if I get it from the left arm or the right arm, from your left foot, your right foot, from your neck, or wherever I get it from, it essentially has the same concentration of whatever it is throughout the bloodstream. Now, there's some differences, of course. You've got higher oxygen concentration in the arteries and higher carbon dioxide concentration in the veins and so on. But it's relatively even distribution throughout the bloodstream. So you can get it from anywhere and tell what's going on anywhere else. Now, what was the concentration of uric acid going to the left foot compared to the concentration of uric acid going to the right foot? The same. Same, right? The same. Yeah, it's all the same blood. It's all coming through the same heart, all going the same pathway. So how'd you end up with gout on the left foot and not on the right foot? Did the uric acid say, woohoo, hey guys, let's have a party over here? No? Okay. If you go walking down the beach, now I know you drive a little way and you get there, right? If you go walking down the beach and on the beach you see a sandcastle, what must you conclude? Someone made the sandcastle, right? Nobody walks down the beach, even an atheist doesn't walk down the beach, see a sandcastle, and say, oh, look, random processes. Right? Oh, look what the normal processes of wind, waves, and ever that kind of stuff form. No. If you see a sandcastle, you know someone built the sandcastle. Now, can you build a sandcastle without sand? No, you can't. You take the sand away, you have no more sandcastle. But if you take the sand away and have no more sandcastle, did you take away the sandcastle builder? Oh. Ah. All right. So can the gout concentrate itself anywhere? No, because there's a law of diffusion. And the law of diffusion is that those chemicals go from an area of higher concentration to an area of lower concentration. So there's no way for the chemical itself to accumulate itself and to concentrate itself to become super concentrated in order to form crystals and cause a problem there. Can't do it. It's like saying the sand made the sandcastle by itself. Can't happen. So, sure, you can take a medication to lower the uric acid levels, just like it could come along and take the sand out of the sandcastle, and now you no longer have the manifestation of the issue, but did you take away the builder? No, you didn't. So what was the cholesterol concentration in the bloodstream at the plaque versus after the plaque versus before the plaque? Same. The same. So how come you end up with a plaque here and you don't end up with a plaque down here, or it's smaller over here and it's bigger over here? If it was just the cholesterol, it should look like this, right? An even accumulation throughout the tubes. But that's not what you see. You see this. So is it the cholesterol that's having a party and accumulating itself in a location and saying, hey guys, let's come over here? No. But if you decrease your cholesterol levels low enough, you're not eating cholesterol in your diet, you're exercising, you're on a whole food plant-based diet, and you stress management and all that kind of stuff, well, there's research that shows that you can decrease those cholesterol plaques. Yeah. On average by 30% over 18 months or so. But did you take away the plaque builder, or did you just take away the sand? You just took away the sand. Right. And when it comes to the breast cancer on the left side, and somebody has been eating all this, bratwurst and salami and all that kind of stuff, did the bratwurst and salami only go to the left side? No, didn't it go to the right side too? Yeah, so why did it show up on the left and not the right? Is it the food that's saying, hey, let's have a party over here? No, can the food have a party someplace? No, it's just chemicals, right? So chemicals may cause dysfunction in a certain type of cell first. For example, if you have iodine deficiency, where is that going to manifest first? Thyroid. Right? It's going to manifest in your thyroid first because your thyroid has the highest utilization and the greatest need for iodine. And so if you start becoming deficient, you'll find it in the thyroid first. But all of the cells need iodine to some degree or another. And so if the deficiency gets progressively worse and worse, it'll eventually become generalized. So you can see it manifest first in a certain location, but it must be throughout that entire tissue. Not just a spot here or a spot there, just like inheritance. So if somebody has an iodine deficiency and they develop a goiter and it's an even goiter and you can see it all throughout, well, that can be because of the chemical. But if you have somebody that has nodules here, there, that cannot be the chemical. Can't be the chemical. Because the chemical has to be used evenly throughout that cell population. If it's not being used evenly, then it means something else is controlling the cell population in those particular locations. So chemicals can be used as a part of a disease process, and they can be used as a cofactor. And if you take the cofactor away, the disease doesn't manifest itself, just like gout and taking the allopurinol and decreasing your uric acid levels, and the gout goes away. But the chemical is not the cause because it can't create a new process. And it can't create a new process. The chemical is only used as a part of the process. Right? So then we're left scratching our heads. What's the cause? Right? What's the cause? Well, let's go to our fourth point. Our fourth point is the mind. Right? The mind. And that's what we started looking at yesterday. And that whole pathway of spiritual information through the spirit, to the cortex of the brain, through the nerve pathways to the various different parts of the body, and controlling their function. And indeed, the brain is set up, the nervous system is set up in a very marvelous way so that you have a single point in the cortex that has a single spot or location in the body that it is attached to through these pathways, so that you have a single function that's from here and a single sensation that goes there, and so on and so forth. And it's very well regulated. You have this homunculus. And so everybody controls their toes from the upper inner portion of their cortex, and everybody controls their tongue from the outer lateral part of their cortex, and the sensations from those areas are lined up kind of like this as well, and your fingers are controlled up here, so you've got feet in the middle there, fingers over here, tongue over here, and everybody it's that way. And it's very well regulated, very well specified, so that every place in the body has some kind of representation in the cortex of the brain. Everywhere. And that way, when somebody comes up behind you in the dark and you can't see a thing and they poke you with a pin, and you go, ah, and you jump and you whatever, you know exactly where they poked you. Because you've got a single spot that's attached to a single spot in the cortex, and now you can interpret where they came from. Right? So, you have, through that pathway, a nerve that goes to, guess what? That joint. And it doesn't go to any other joint. And it carries a signal from the cortex to that location that then results in releasing a neurotransmitter. And that neurotransmitter is picked up by something, by living cells. It's picked up by living cells in the area, including your immune cells, your white blood cells. Because what's involved in here, that red stuff around there is supposed to represent what? Inflammation. Anytime you have inflammation, what system is involved? Your immune system. Right? Anytime you have inflammation, the immune system is involved. So your immune system is involved in this inflammatory process, plus you have living cells that are around in that area, and they can pick up that signal, and from that signal, it's a living cell that can pull in material, let in material from the outside, concentrate it within itself, and then spit it out. Or die and leave its contents behind. And you can then super concentrate in an area. It's an active process against the normal flow of diffusion to bring the chemicals and to concentrate them, and it's only an active process that can do it. It's a living cell that can do it. But what's controlling the living cells? Yeah, the mind. Right? Even the cells down in the toe. Right? And if it's the left toe, then it's right mind. Right? And it's there up in the upper inner right, part. And there's a spot that controls that particular joint and doesn't go to anywhere else. And the same thing happens in the arteries. You've got a nerve ending that goes to that particular place in the artery, and then you have a signal that's released. We know that inflammation is associated with plaque development. And of course, inflammation, you have to have the immune system that's involved. So you have your white blood cells that are involved, and some of them are picking up extra cholesterol and they become foam cells. And now there's this signal for them to come to this area, and they come there, and some of them die and they leave their cholesterol behind, and that process continues, and more of them come and die, more come and die, and they leave that cholesterol behind, and that cholesterol plaque gets bigger and bigger and bigger, not because it concentrated itself, but because it was delivered there. Because there was a signal. And the signal was coming from where? From the mind. And the cancer. Well, guess what? You got nerve endings that go to the left side from the right brain. And you've got other ones that go to the right side from the left brain. Nobody asked the question, why do they develop cancer on this side versus that side? And why here and not there? And so on. Nobody asked that question. Why? Because nobody knows how to answer it. Don't ask the questions you don't know how to answer. Right? Just don't ask them, you know? Like, why do I have cancer? Right? Just ask your doctor that. Why do I have cancer? And they'll say, well, you know, you might be this, you've got age, and you've got gender, and you've got this, that, and the other things. And you say, no, that doesn't tell me why I have it. Why do I have it? You keep asking and pestering, they're ultimately going to say, I don't know. I don't know. But if you don't know what the cause is, what are you going to treat? What you do know, symptoms, right? Or do something that you think will take care of the problem, like adding just enough poison to the system to kill the problem without killing the person. Sorry, I'm being hard probably a little bit. I mean, I've worked in ICU, I've worked in ER, I've worked in the hospital, I've worked in clinics and all that kind of stuff. I was taught this stuff. That's what I learned. But after I got done, I had to unlearn a lot of stuff. I had to learn a lot more things along the way. We have good research now that shows if you cut the nerve going to a tumor, it changes how the tumor behaves. It does. Doesn't behave the same way after you cut the nerve going to the center of a tumor. And indeed, there's plenty of evidence, plenty of research that shows that every step in the cancer development and growth and blood vessels growing to it, the angiogenesis and its ability to get away from the basement membrane and still stay alive, that's called anoikis, and its mesothelial transformation from looking like a really specific type of cell to not so specific type of cell, and then its ability to get off through the blood vessels and the lymph and to go to another place and then set up shop somewhere else, metastasize. Every single step is influenced by the nervous system. Neuropeptides, neurotrophins, neurohormones, neurotransmitters, and so on that are released and assist in the process. So in my practice, now that I've got in the Lifestyle Center and I've got time to sit down with people and ask them questions and go through their life histories, I find that most individuals come down with their cancer after some major traumatic event. Some major loss, something that they're dealing with, a huge guilt, a big bitterness, something else of that nature, lost their job, lost a loved one, something like that. There was a big trauma, and within a year, a couple of years, cancer manifests. Yeah. Why? Because there's that pathway. So the mind can control processes. It can. It can start processes, it can stop processes, it can increase them, it can decrease them. It's the major controller of everything really that happens in the body. And it regulates all homeostatic mechanisms. Your heart rate, your blood pressure, your fluid volume, your electrolyte levels, your pH, and so on. All of it is controlled through the mind. For everything, there's a place that receives the information and then sends feedback back to then regulate those things. Right? And it's all there controlled in the mind. And the effects of the mind can be generalized. You know, like you get scared by the bear that comes out and meets you in the morning. And then that sends a signal down to the adrenal glands. Adrenal glands release some epinephrine or norepinephrine, and that starts circulating through the whole system, and your heart rate goes up, and your pupils dilate, and your blood pressure and all of that kind of stuff. All of that changes, and you can have a generalized response, or you can have very localized things, depending on where it comes in through the cortex and where it impacts in the body. And the mind controls the immune system and its function, so the mind ultimately is in control of inflammation. And then we can throw in an autoimmunity and so on. That might have an impact by the mind as well. And it is the primary, but not the only controller of cells, tissues, organs, and organ system function. And when we take a look at these various different things that cause dysfunction, the mind is the big piece of the pie. Right? In fact, what you do is you take a slice of the pie out of there, the rest of it is the mind. That is the origin. Now, that doesn't mean that everything's all in somebody's head. You know, that's what I run into too. I mean, I'm dealing with people in the lifestyle center. They don't come to us because they're healthy. They come to us because they're sick. And so I get into this, and somebody's like, Doc, do you mean to tell me it's all in my head? No, there's very real physical things going on in your body, and we can look at them, we can measure them, we can X-ray them, we can do all of that kind of stuff. But the foundation, the origin, is in the mind, right? But if you don't know how the body works, if you don't know how these things happen, then it's hard to get there to understand, well, how can that be? Right? How can that be? And that really represents about 90% of the picture. So every effect has a cause. Every cause produces an effect. And all energy necessary for a system to function must come from outside that system. So according to the laws of thermodynamics and the law of cause and effect, the cause can never be found where the effect is at. So if you want to find the cause for the abscess, you can't look in the abscess. Because the cause can't come from there. Had to come from outside. If you want to know the cause for the tumor, you can't look at the tumor. Because the cause had to come from outside. Right? Now, it will looking at the thing will tell you what it is. And that can be useful information to know what it is. But it'll never tell you why. Because the why had to come from outside. Right? And the fifth and final cause for dysfunction is the enemy. So we had Job, you know, he was a righteous man in all his ways, and there was this great controversy thing going on between Satan and God, and Job kind of got caught up in the middle of this thing. And it was not an inheritance problem that he developed all of these abscesses, these boils. It was not a trauma issue that happened. It was not a chemical issue, and he was just using the wrong stuff. And it wasn't a mind issue because the Lord's testimony of him that he was righteous in all of his ways, right? So it wasn't any of those things. It was the enemy that was allowed to get at him by permission for a particular purpose. Now, nowadays, what I would do if Job came to me, and I didn't know all of Job's history, but I knew what he's got, what I would do is, well, you would find all of these abscesses and you'd cut them open, right? Drain them, incision and drainage. Well, what did Job do? He scraped himself with pot shards. What are pot shards? Yeah, broken pieces of pottery. How does pottery break? Sometimes pretty sharp. And you get those really sharp pieces, it makes a good knife. And you lance your abscesses. So he was treating his abscesses. And then it said he did what? He sat in ashes, right? And I don't think that means that he just stuck his rear end in ashes. He covered himself in ashes. What are ashes? Charcoal. Charcoal is a treatment for abscesses, right? Skin infections and other things of that nature, inflammation and so on. So he was treating it, but guess what it wasn't doing? Wasn't going away, right? Because he wasn't treating the cause, he couldn't treat the cause. And if I took Job, I would also put him on antibiotics. But would the abscesses go away? No, because it's not addressing the cause. The abscesses wouldn't go away until the trial was finished, until the question was answered. And once the question was answered, then it could go away. Guess what was not the cause of his abscesses? The bacteria. The bacteria was not the cause of his abscesses. I'm sure we could culture, get in the abscess, culture, and get some bacteria out of there, and we could probably look at it and see what its sensitivities were like and what antibiotics it was sensitive to and so on and so forth, but still it wouldn't take care of the problem because it wasn't the cause. Microorganisms, like chemicals, all right, let me step out into something here. If a microorganism could take over a macroorganism and direct it to destruction, how many macroorganisms would there be? 0, right? Because there are trillions and trillions of microorganisms for every macroorganism that there is, right? Microorganisms are not the enemy. You can't live without microorganisms. You have to have them. They inhabit your gut. They inhabit your respiratory tract. They inhabit your skin. You have them all over you, and they're there all the time. And yes, we have certain ones that we understand are pathologic, like MRSA and other things of that nature. But guess what? There are people that live with MRSA without a single infection. It's colonized on them. It's in their skin. It's up their nose. It's other locations. They don't have a single problem associated with it. So is it the microorganisms that break in and take over? If it was, there wouldn't be any of us left. Just like the sand can't build itself into a sandcastle. It has to have a builder. But if you don't have the sand, you don't have the sandcastle. So with the infections, you can't have the infection without the microorganism. But is it the microorganism that's causing the infection, or only the microorganism that's being used as a part of the infection? And if it has the right environment in order for it to grow and to do what it does, because microorganisms, part of their function is to break things down, right? After something dies and so on, microorganisms, part of their function is to break things down. So if it's provided with the right environment or the wrong environment, then they start doing their function, which is breaking things down. But it's not them that are breaking in and causing the problem. It's them coming and taking advantage of the situation that's already there. Right? And it's a different way of thinking about infections, which would help us a lot in this pandemic. And there's a whole series that is currently being released day by day right now called Lessons from COVID. And it's an 11-part series that I've done. And keep an eye out for it. It'll be another week and a half or so before it's done. And then it'll be available for everyone. But check with Uchee Pines on the website. And we're having a viewing for everybody that signed up for it right now, day by day. But once that's done, then it'll be open to everyone else. And you can check that out. And it's, it'll give us much things to think about and to think upon, because I don't think there's a lot of us that are really thinking. I am going to switch to the next presentation. And we're going to dive into some more stuff. And I told you we're going to start seeing how crazy we are today. So we're going to start looking at that craziness. And by the way, if you're interested, we're not going to be able to cover everything when we're together. We're going to cover as much as we can, but we're not going to be able to cover everything. And so there's a book that goes along with the series too that my wife has out there, and it's called The Law of Life. Now, if you don't get it now, that's fine. It's on Amazon. You can pick it up too. But I do recommend it. I do suggest it because it's a life changer. All right, so you and I have information that comes to us all the time. All the time. And information fits into one of two categories. Information is either truth or it's lies. And truth has an origin. Where does truth come from? From God, right? God is the source. He is the origin of all truth. I don't care if it's truth in the Bible, truth in the spirit of prophecy, or truth outside of that. All truth comes from God. Lies come from where? Satan, who is the father of lies, right? So he's the originator of lies. And so all information that comes to us fits into one of those two categories. And the question is, which is it? Is it truth? Is it lies? Now, in order for you to understand whether something is truth or lies, there is something that has to happen. You have to evaluate. You have to evaluate the information and then come up with a determination. And in that evaluation process, you and I come to the determination that we either believe it to be the truth or we believe it to be a lie. And everything that we believe is the truth, we will accept. We'll take it in. It becomes a part of us. But everything that we believe is a lie, we will reject it. We won't believe it. It won't come in, won't be a part of us. So in order for you to evaluate, what must you have? You have to have, you got to have a mind, right? Got to have a mind that can think and can process, and that mind has to use something. It has to use a standard. You have to use a standard that you compare the information against to see whether it fits or whether it doesn't fit, right? Whether it matches, whether it doesn't match. So you got to have that standard. And the question is, what happens if you have a bad standard? Well, you're going to take truth and believe it's a lie and reject it, and you're going to take lies and believe them to be the truth and accept them. And you'll be completely backwards, all wrong. Now, what if you have a mixed standard? How's that going to turn out? All right, it's going to be confusing. That's right. Confusion, Babylon, tree of knowledge of good and evil, right? So you'll end up taking some of the truth and accepting it as truth. You'll take some of the truth and reject it as lies. You'll take some lies and reject them as lies, and other lies and believe them to be the truth, and you'll get mixed up, and you'll have a mixed bag. What's the only way that you will come to a correct conclusion? If you've got a good standard, a perfect standard, right? And if you have a perfect standard, then all truth will be accepted as truth and all lies will be rejected as lies, and you'll end up with a correct evaluation, a correct conclusion. Now the question is, how well do we do at this? Seventh-day Adventists that know the truth. Come on. How well do we do at this? Absolutely horrible. Absolutely horrible. So, how long is the pencil? All right, barely sharpened. Just enough to, make that point. All right, give me some numbers. 8 inches. 6 inches. What else? 2. All right, 2 inches. All right, yeah. 7 inches. All right. 9. All right, good. So, whoops, don't kick things hanging. There we go. All right. So, we're going to have this fun game. It's not so fun, but... Let's try that again. And for this fun game... What we're going to do is, when nobody can get out of it, everybody has to give a number. Yeah, I know, it's coming. It will come. Faith, it will come. There we go. And everybody's got to pick a number. You can't get out of the game. You got to play it. But if your number is more than 0.1 inch off from the real deal, you die. You die. All right, so how comfortable are you feeling with this game right now? Like, how confident do you think you're going to be walking out of here alive? Yeah, not very confident at all, right? So how trustworthy is your estimate? Yeah, not very trustworthy at all. Now, what if we got everybody's number, we added them all up together, we divided them by the number of guesses that there were, and we got the average. And if the average is more than 0.1 inch off, everybody dies. You confident with that one too? No? Okay. Well, in statistics, they tell us garbage in, garbage out. Right? So if it's not trustworthy going in, I don't care what you do with it, it's not trustworthy coming out either. So, what do you want? You want to measure it. Right? Good, good. You want to measure it. Here's my measure. All right, there's my ruler. I've made my ruler, and so here I have my marks, and there I've got my numbers and so on. And when I put the ruler up there next to it, it's about, I don't know, 13¼ marks. You happy with that? And if I'm wrong, and we're all wrong, then we die? No, you're not happy with that. Ah, skeptics. All right. Anybody try to build a house by looking at the blueprints and it says, okay, you need 10 pieces of wood that are 8 feet 6 inches. And you look at the wood and you go 8 feet 6 inches. I think that's about right here. And the next one, I think that's about here. And the next one, I think it's about here. And the next one, I think it's about here. And every measurement you estimate and you cut your wood and you go to put your house together. How well is that going to work? Yeah, not good at all, at all. Now, you make your own ruler and you hash it out and you put your numbers on there and all that kind of stuff and you follow the instructions and you measure your 8 feet 6 inches and whatever the numbers are, and you're consistent and you measure it 2 and 3 times before you cut, and you cut exact and you do all of that kind of stuff. You get to the end of that, how is that house going to work? Yeah, better, right? It might be in proportion, but you might walk into the house and go, and walk in and try to get on the counter for something, and the cabinets are way up there. Or you might walk into the house and go, and have to scrunch in there and walk around like this because it's too small or too big or whatever. The only way that you're going to get the right house from the blueprints is if you have the right measuring tape, right? The right measure. So what you want is you want a standard measure. Now that one's metric. I couldn't find a... Yeah, anyways, it's standard. Just not for Americans. Americans don't know what to do with tens for some reason. And so here you have a standard measure. So now you can measure the thing with it. You can measure it 50, 100 times if you want to. Make sure that you get the same thing every time. And now you can be a bit more confident about saying, okay, well, it's this long. So what if I tell you that the pencil, all right, so you need an unchangeable universal standard that's outside of yourself in order to compare your estimate or your evaluation against. That's the only way you can be confident that you've got the right thing. That's the only way. You've got to have an external standard. So what if I tell you the pencil is 32 feet long? Are you going to believe me? Praise the Lord. Don't believe me. What do you need to do? You need to get your own measure and measure it with and see how long it is. But my 32 feet is a lot closer than your 8 inches. Because it happens to be a pencil monument in front of a pencil factory in Casey, Illinois. So, you've been tricked. That's right. Absolutely. It's easy. It's so easy to trick people. It is. It's so easy to trick people. It's not hard at all. Not hard at all. And I'm not that smart. Devil's a lot smarter than I am. It's so easy to trick people. Why? Because we have the wrong standard. Got the wrong standard. Now, nobody taught us how to think. We just, grew up thinking, and you don't have a class in how you think. So we're going to go through a little class of how you think, and we're going to do it in a fun way. We're going to put together a puzzle. So we're going to put together a puzzle together, And in this puzzle, you have the place where the puzzle is going to go minus a little bit over here on the right side. And every puzzle piece is going to come up here on the left side, top left. And they're all rectangular. There's no, projections or anything else of that nature. And you got to put them in the right place. So where does that one go? And you don't know if they belong to this puzzle or not, and whether they're in the right orientation or not. So where does it go? You don't know? You don't have a clue. All right, it could stay right there, except I got to bring more into there, so we'll just move it off to the side a little bit. All right, so here you go. There's your next piece. Where does that go? This puzzle, not this puzzle? Right orientation, wrong orientation? Right location, not right location? All right, not enough information. All right, yeah, it's not TMI, it's NEI, yeah. So, all right, well, let's just throw that down here. All right, we're not sure. And so you've got another piece. All right. What's that? All right, so it looks like you've got a little bit of a mountain, right? So we've got a little bit of mountain going on right there. So at least that gives us a little bit of something to work with. So where do mountains usually go? All right, so somewhere towards the top-ish, middle-ish, whatever. So let's throw it down there. All right, now we got another piece. Where does that one go? Oh, this is the first time you know where to put a piece, right? Because you got a little bit of context that you're working with. All right, so there you go. That's very good. All right, you got another piece. Where does that go? All right, right next to it. Very good. And you got another piece. Where does it go? All right, right next to that. You guys are fast. All right, now we've got bonus round. We got a bunch of them hooked together. Oh, okay, over to the left side. Very good. All right, excellent, right? All right, now you got another piece. Where does that go? All right, top somewhere. So let's just shuffle it over there. We're not sure exactly. All right, now we got another piece. All right, bring it down. That's right. Very good. Oh, look at that. Beautiful. All right, now you got another piece. Yeah, it's upside down. What do you do with it? Turn it right side up, and then put it where? Yeah, okay, well, we'll just throw it over here in the we're not sure pile. Does it belong to this puzzle? I don't know. All right, so we've got another one. It's got some treetops in it. All right, that's right, over there to the right side. Very good. You got another one, and that one, I don't know how well it projects, but you got some treetop right there. Oh, that's right, straight down. Very good. Look at that. All right, very good. Now, there's a problem, because those guys don't match that sky color anywhere. So, and that, yeah, so we're not sure exactly what we're doing. All right, so another bonus round. Where's this going? All right, not in that picture. Somebody says bottom. All right, right next. Oh, okay, yeah, right there. All right, very good. Look at that. Oh, beautiful. All right, now we have another piece. Where is that going to go? That's upside down. What do you want to do with it? Left. Well, it is left. Turn it over. Okay. Now you start looking at it closer and you realize, hang on, look at that, and look at that. Huh, I wonder. Oh, okay. That piece there is what we call a paradigm shift, right? Every piece that we're putting together is a piece of information, right? Oh, you're starting to, all right. So now, yes. All right, so at the beginning, you don't have anything to compare with. You have no context. You don't have a clue what to do with the information. So it just kind of swims around. You're not sure what to do with it. And then you start getting some bits of information that look like they make a little sense. And now you got new bits of information that looks like they make sense with the bits of information that you already have, and then you start putting your puzzle together. And it starts developing a picture a paradigm, right? And then as you're going along, sometimes you're confronted with stuff you don't know what to do with it because it just doesn't fit. And then eventually sometime you get this information that comes along, and if you reject it, you're still dealing with the same picture you always thought you were dealing with. But if you accept it and you figure out where it fits into the puzzle, then it changes your whole concept of what you're dealing with. And now things you didn't have a clue whether they even went there or not, now you look at them and you go, oh, it's probably going to fit, right? So this guy is probably going to fit somewhere up in here because you know that it's pretty dark in that area. And those guys, they fit with this guy down here. Ah, right. So bonus rounds the rest of the way because we can't take too much time. Where does that go? All right, yep, down and to the right. Very good. All right, now we've got a place for that black piece. He's going to fit right up in there. Oh, beautiful. And that upside down one, yep, you're right. It goes right down there. Excellent. Oh, beautiful. All right, so we have another piece here that has a little tip of a tree right there. And we've got a little bit of a tree left over there. So it looks like it's probably going to fit down that way. It does. Very good. All right. Now, those things we didn't know what to do with at the beginning, we got somewhere for them to go now. Very good. Another piece. Where's that going to go? Yeah, right down in the middle in the center. And now where's that other last piece going to go? Right down there in its space. Oh, it's so beautiful. All right. Now we've got, all right, come straight down. Very good. And we're going to move that one just right across and fill in the space over there. We're going to fill in our light blue down below. Very good. And finally, we're going to move that right up. And there we go. Oh, beautiful, right? It's just a beautiful picture. So what happens if we, so here we see how we work, how we think, You've got to have some kind of context that you're working with, and based on that context, you start putting new information in to see how it fits, and if it doesn't fit, it kind of goes off into the I'm not sure pile, or sometimes in the rejection pile, and the things that do fit, we take them in, and it builds our worldview. The puzzle represents our worldview. And so every bit of information is compared with our worldview to see how it fits or how it doesn't fit. But what happens if you have come to a nice, ripe old age and you find out your whole world is upside down? And this is right side up. Yeah. Yeah. So, could it be possible that we could be all upside down, but thinking that we're all right side up? Yeah. So if we look at that, we can see a few things. Now, you don't have the luxury of getting very close and having a really clear picture. I do on my screen, and so I can tell that there's some ripples in the tree lines up here, and there's no ripples down here. So if you have the ability to look at it very closely and evaluate it, you can tell, all right, it's not right. But there's something else that can help you out, even if you can't come and evaluate it very closely. If you know the law. If you know the law of light tells us the sky is always lighter than the water's reflection of the sky. Right? The sky is always lighter than the water's reflection of the sky. So if you knew the law, you would know you were putting things upside down. And you would switch it around. But everybody, what do they want? They want the picture. They want the box top. That's right. So God has given us the ability to evaluate and scrutinize things very closely to see whether it fits or whether it doesn't fit. God has given us his law that we can use as the standard by which to evaluate and compare things to. And we haven't done that very well, so God sent Jesus to be the picture of the law himself, so that we can compare things to the life of Jesus and see if it fits or if it doesn't fit. Right? Now, we determine information is true if it fits into our worldview, and we determine information is false if it doesn't fit into our worldview. But what determines our worldview? It's the ones we trust. Right? When we were little, growing up, the ones that told us it's this way and not that way. It's the other way, but not the other way, and so on. It's our parents, it's our family, our community, our society, our church, and so on. It's the information that we take in from those that we trust that builds our worldview puzzle. So that builds our worldview. So which one is a pet and which one is food? None are pets and none are food. All right? Well, she might grow up thinking that that is pet and those are food. But she doesn't come to that conclusion originally. Her original conclusion is they're all pets. Right? They're all pets. That's the original conclusion. And this boy, he might grow up thinking that that's pet, and that's food. But he didn't come to that conclusion originally. It's because he lives in a society and a culture and family and others that told him, that's food. And that's like Thanksgiving food, you know. So you grow those and you have those for special occasions and so on. And you can have cat fry and so on. Why? Well, what determines it? It's your worldview. And your worldview is determined by the ones that you love and what they told you. So the information from the ones that we trust builds the framework of our worldview puzzle, and new information is then brought in and evaluated against that worldview to determine whether it fits or whether it doesn't fit. But what if the people we believed in and the information that they shared with us, what if it was all upside down? Yeah, we would be upside down too. Thinking that we're right side up. Because if you've been upside down your whole life, upside down looks right side up. Looks right side up. Yeah. So could this be possible for us? Yeah. So we can't trust ourselves or our estimation of information to determine whether it's true or false. Because we are not the standard. But there has to be a standard. There has to be a standard that is outside of us, that is universal, that is unchangeable, by which we can compare our estimate against to determine whether it is true. And the question is, what is that standard? Yeah, Jesus is the living picture of that standard. And in written form, we're told in Isaiah 8 and verse 20, to the law and to the testimony, if they do not speak according to this word, it is because there is how much light in them? No light in them. So if the worldview puzzle picture does not match with the law picture, it's not right. But how many of us are going around evaluating and comparing with the standard? Not very many. Not very many at all. And so it's very easy to trick people. Very easy. Because there's no standard that they're standing on. Right? It's a worldview. So when it talks about the law and the testimony, it's talking about this. Right? The 10 Commandments. And how many of the commandments tell you not to do something? You shall not have any other gods before me. That's a not. Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image. That's a not. Thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain. That's a not. Thou shalt not kill. Thou shalt not commit adultery. Thou shalt not steal. Thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife and a house, and so on. So 8 of the 10 commandments say thou shalt not. And every thou shalt not, in essence, tells us, don't take from here, don't take like this. Right? Don't take from here, don't take like this. Don't take from false gods. Don't take from idols or representations. Don't take my name, Christian, Christ, and live like the world or the devil. Don't take your life and your meaning from here. Don't take your intimacy from here. Don't take your belonging from here. Don't take your stuff from here. Don't even think about taking from here. All right? So 8 of the commandments tell us don't take from here, don't take like this. That leaves us with 2 commandments. The 4th and the 5th. And the 4th is on one table of stone and the 5th is on the other table of stone. The 4th tells us what? Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the 7th day is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God. Right? And then in it you should, it goes on to say a long thing to say you should rest. Right? Now, what is the nature of rest? If you, on the Sabbath, give. No, that's fine. But is it restful? Not really, right? Is constantly giving restful? No, it drains you, right? What is the nature of rest? To be refreshed, right? What, if you are, can you be restful when you're suffocating? Can you be restful when you are thirsting to death? Can you be restful when you are just absolutely uncomfortable with hunger? Yeah, you can be at peace. But rest comes when you have taken a full breath and you have supplied your need for oxygen and you no longer have that suffocation. Rest comes when you have drunk enough water and you have supplied the need for water and now you don't have that thirst anymore. Rest comes when you have supplied the need of food and you don't have that hunger gnawing at you anymore. There is a restfulness that comes in taking what you need and being full so that you're satisfied. The nature of rest is taking until you're full. Right? The nature of rest is taking until you are full. So the 4th commandment, in essence, tells us, take. Take from where? In verse 11, it says that He's the creator of the heavens and the earth. Right? He's the creator of all that there is. He's the source of everything. He has everything that you need. So the 4th commandment bids us to come to God and take everything we need from God so that we're full. And when you take all that you need from Him so that you're full, you're rested. The 5th commandment tells us to do what? Honor your father and your mother. Is honor taking or is it giving? It's giving. You give honor to your parents. So you are to give to whom? Your parents and others, right? The first table of stone is the God stone. The second table of stone is the people stone. This is your relationship with God. This is your relationship with others. So the relationship with God is a relationship of taking. That is God's intention for us in relationship with Him, is that we come to Him and we take and we take and we take and we take until we're full. The relationship with others is a relationship of giving. Now, what do you give? Can you give what you don't have? No, you cannot give what you do not have. So you can only give what you've got. You can only have it if you take it. So how do you have honor for your parents? You can only have honor for your parents if you come and take honor from God. And then you have honor to give to your parents. Now, does it say that your parents have to be honorable in order for you to give honor to them? No. It doesn't matter what they're like. It doesn't matter how they treat you. It doesn't matter whether they were good or they were bad or anything else like that. It doesn't matter. What you give because what you have. And you have what you have because of what you took. And if you took honor from God, you have honor to give to your parents. But if you find yourself unable to honor your parents, why is that? Because you didn't come and take honor from God. And if you didn't take it, you can't give it, right? The one you take from, you are dependent upon. The one you take from, you're dependent upon. Babies dependent upon mommy, right? We are to be dependent upon God, right? And so, like, let's say, for instance, you're looking for country property. Now, you live in the country, all right? Let's talk wilderness property, all right? So you're looking for wilderness property now. And so you've got this nice mountain location, obviously not in Michigan. Well, I don't know. It might be Raccoon Mountain if you've got to go a long ways to get there. But Michigan's pretty flat. And anyway, so you find this nice place, and maybe it's Montana, and you know, you've got this nice river that's running through it, and it's nice agricultural land as well. And there's a home upstream, and there's one in the middle, and there's another one downstream, and the one in the middle, it's for sale, and it's just the right price. Doesn't matter what money you got, you can buy it. It's there. And so you do. You buy it and you get this house, and it's wonderful. You have all the water you need to water your crops. You've got enough water pressure to have a good strong shower upstairs. You can run a hydroelectric plant and generate electricity and be off the grid. It's just great. And you can drink it. It's nice and clean. So one day, your neighbor downstream from you, you know, rivers coming from the mountains coming down this way, the neighbor downstream from you decides that they're going to start some kind of manufacturing plant, and they suck all this water out of that into the plant, and then they spit this stuff out into the river. Does that directly affect you? No. Right? Because it's going down that way. You have all the clean water that you need. You have all the water for your crops. You have all the water to drink. You have all that kind of stuff. It doesn't directly affect you because it's going downstream. What's that? Well, yeah, that you know, it's obviously it's clean energy right there. I don't know, maybe it's nuclear. But you're right. If the wind is going downstream as well, then you're okay still. Now, the neighbor upstream from you decides they're going to do the same thing. Does that directly affect you? Yes, absolutely. Now, you don't have to fight with the neighbor downstream who's doing it because it doesn't affect you. But when it's the neighbor upstream from you that's doing it, then you got to fight. You got to fight in order to try to get them to stop doing that so that you can have your pure water and you can do whatever, because now your people are turning green and your plants are turning brown. And it's not working that well. So you're dependent upon the one that you take from, but you're independent of the one that you give to. So God is telling us that we are to be dependent upon whom? Him. And who else? Him. And who else? Him. Right? God and God alone is to be our dependency. And when you come and make him your dependency and you take from him what is good, you will give good. Now, what kind of love does he have? Does he have a selfish love or a selfless love? Selfless. So what kind of love are you going to give to others? Selfless love. You can only give a selfless love if you come and take a selfless love. If you're giving a selfish love and you want to then give a selfless love, you can't make yourself give a selfless love. You can't do it. The only way is to come to the source and take it so that you have it, so that you can give it. So if you take good into your property, you're going to likely give good out of your property. But if you take bad into your property, you're going to give bad out of your property. So we in Christianity tend to focus on behaviors, right? So I didn't speak well to my wife today. I spanked the children too hard today. I yelled at I was the boss and I yelled at the employees today. And, and I did that and this and the other thing. And I got all these things and I got this laundry list of things to ask forgiveness for by the end of the day. Or if I forgot by the next morning, or if I forgot for the last week, then whichever ones I can remember by the time I get to prayer. And is it not just me? Okay, all right. So So we try to fix things by fixing the output. Okay, I shouldn't behave like that. Okay, I shouldn't respond that way. Okay, I need to, And so we try to patch things by not giving the bad stuff out. How well does that work? Yeah, well, if you're still on that plan, you're still failing. Right? Yeah, because it doesn't work. Because you can't help giving bad if you're taking bad. So you don't fix the giving by fixing the giving. How do you fix the giving? By fixing the taking, right? You go take from good sources, then you've got some good stuff to give. That's the only way you can fix it, is by going and taking from the right source. So the law shows us that if we boil it down, the law is take from God as your source to give to others. They're not your source. That's what the law tells us. Right? Take from Him as your only source and give to others. They're not your source. And that is love. The law defines for us what love is. There are plenty of definitions that are out there, but the law shows us what love is. And love is taking all you need from God, which is good, and you give good away to others. Regardless of what they're like and regardless of what they do with it, it's a selfless love. Now, we talked about a fundamental law of all nature last night. Right? And that fundamental law says that nothing exists from itself and nothing exists for itself. Everything's dependent upon materials and resources and everything outside of it in order to, have anything to work with. But then it doesn't keep it to itself, it passes it along. So everything in nature takes to give. Oh, hang on. Where did we just see take to give? Oh, the 10 Commandments. So what is the fundamental law of all nature? 10 Commandments. Take to give. That's right. It is the fundamental law of all nature. All natural law is built upon the 10 Commandments. And it has physical implications like thermodynamics and cause and effect that we looked at last time. Again, that's the law of life. But it has spiritual implications as well. So all created things are channels, taking life and resources and materials and so on from someone else, not ourselves, but from God. And then passing those on to others, right? We don't keep it to ourselves. We pass it along to support the life and function of others. That is the law of life. That is taking to give. That is unselfish love. That is the rule of all things. And that is the standard that you and I must measure everything by. Does it meet the standard of taking from God and giving to others, or does it not meet that standard? If it doesn't meet that standard, it's wrong. It's wrong. And I have like 3 slides and I'll stop. Or 4. So here's a common passage that we're all familiar with. This is from the mouth of Jesus. And we're now going to evaluate this statement, because you've got to evaluate everything. Even the Word of God, we've got to evaluate. We know that it's true, but we usually interpret it based upon our own understanding. We need to come and interpret the Scripture based upon the law, the standard. If they speak not according to the law, it's because there's no light in them. So did Jesus have light in him? Absolutely. So let's look at this statement. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind. This is the first and great commandment. And the second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. What is this not saying? All right, so we've got plants. That's real. That's real. Okay, that's real too. Okay, so step out here. So I've got a hose. You just imagine that I've got a hose, and I've got both ends of the hose. One end and the other end. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to water both of these plants at the same time. Is that going to work? No, not going to work. Right? How much watering am I going to do? Yeah, none. Unless I had some, residual left in the, in the hose, and a little bit's going to dribble out, but that's it. I'm not going to do any significant watering when I'm watering at both ends of the hose. So now how have I always interpreted this passage until a few years ago? You shall give to the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. And this is the first and the great commandment. And the second is like it, you shall give to your neighbor as yourself. Water God and water the neighbor at the same time. How's that going to work? You think you're going to succeed? Now, you'll fail at watering both. Because you weren't created to water out of both ends. So what does that say? According to the law says everything must take from God and give to others. So the loving the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind is saying, come and take everything you need from God for your heart. Take everything you need from God for your soul. Take everything you need from God for your mind. And then, it'll be easy. It'll come natural, right? It's like having the hose hooked up to the faucet and the faucet's running. Can you help but water? No, you can't help but water. And are you going to run out? No, you're not going to run out because you got the source. The reason we run out is because we're unplugged and we're trying to water God and we're trying to water others too. Doesn't work. It's not according to the law. But when we look at it and we see it according to the law, we realize he's not saying we got to water God. That's not the relationship with God. The relationship with God is a taking relationship. And that's okay. That's how God created it, for it to be a taking relationship. But the relationship with others, it's a giving relationship. Right? It's a giving relationship. So as we evaluate information, whether it's spiritual or natural, we must interpret it not by our own standard, not by our own worldview, but by the law of God, which is the law of life. And if we consistently use the law as our standard, then we will come up with the right conclusions. And we might not be looking at the same thing, but all of our conclusions will complement each other. There won't be any contradictions because there can only be contradiction if there's error. Oh, isn't that beautiful? Yes. David said, I delight in thy law. It's my meditation day and night. You know what? I spent years scratching my head saying, what? I mean, thou shalt not this, thou shalt not that, thou shalt not the other thing, that thou shalt not, I can't do anything. Delight in your law, hello. Like, what was he smoking? Now I see it. Now I see it, it's beautiful. Come, take all you need, be full. Then you can't help but giving it away. Right? That's the law. That's what he has for us. Now, there are evidences that we are wrong. There are evidences that we've got things backwards. There are evidences that we are just completely messed up and that we are believing lies up one side and down the other. And one of the lies that we believe is, it's about me. One of the lies we believe is, it's about me. And because we believe that lie, we take things personally. Now, I'm not going into this because our time is done. We'll pick this up tomorrow, and we'll see about taking things personally and these lies, and we're going to start wading through some other lies as well, and then we're going to start looking at the heart and how nasty, horrible the heart is, and then we got to get to the good heart that God wants to give to us, and then how God is going to look at setting us free. So that's where we're going. We're walking on that pathway, but tomorrow we're going to start looking at these lies and wading into it some more. But I'll tell you this, you and I, we're crazy. We're upside down. We've got the wrong standard. But it's time to adopt the right standard so that we can have the right conclusions. Let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, what an awesome God you are. We thank you. Such a wonderful God. And Lord, draw us close to you. Help us to see things from the right perspective. Open our eyes to see the truth. And may we see also and understand the errors, the lies that we have been believing, that we might see it in comparison or in opposition to the truth, and that we might go free. And we pray this thanking you, Lord, for working this out according to your will and way, we pray. In Jesus' name, amen.